All right, good morning, everybody. I welcome you to please sit down, and we are going to get started here shortly. My name is Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News, joined as always by one of our founders, Jake Sherman, for this traveling event series, The Road to Recovery. A big thank you to Goldman Sachs, 10,000 Small Voices, which has been a partner on this series on the road. We've been in Detroit, we've been in New Hampshire, we've been in DC, and now we are here in Miami.
We are in Miami. Welcome to Miami.
We are very excited to have Miami Mayor Francis Suarez join us here in just a moment. Afterward, we are going to be following that with a fireside chat with Florida-based small business owners, Susie Battle, who's owner of Zucker Ice Cream, famous here in Miami, as well as...
Does that mean we could eat ice cream in the morning, or is that...
I mean, it could have been, maybe. We have to stop on our way out of town. We'll also be joined by Leilani Beret-Undiano, Vice President of Ibile Uniform and more. For those of you who don't know about Punchbowl News, we are a little less than 2 years old, a media startup founded out in Washington, D.C., focused on power, people, and politics. You can subscribe to our free morning newsletter at punchbowl.news. Thank you to all of those who are joining us on the live stream as well. And with that, let's welcome the mayor on stage, Mayor Suarez. All right, sir. Thank you so much.
How are you, sir?
Wow.
Good to see you.
Thank you, thank you. You got to try some of the Cuban-inspired ice creams from Susie. Those are the best ones, if you ask me.
This is an order from the mayor, so now we must do it.
Some really good ones.
Now we must do it.
Former Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen.
Yes.
One of my mentors. Thank you. Former Senator Oscar Brayden Jr. Another great friend.
They're all coming out for you this morning.
All coming out.
No, they're coming out for us.
Oh,
They
yeah.
made a big announcement this morning, apparently. I don't know.
All right. We are going to start this conversation with a few news of the day questions, then we're going to get into the topic about small businesses, what's happening here in Miami on the ground. But we wanted to start with the hurricane. Hurricane Ian tragically killed at least 120 people, decimated, of course, parts of Florida, causing just major damage. Senator Rubio has called for $33 billion in disaster relief to help rebuild the state, just as a starting point. Money that Congress approves will likely be part of a year-end government funding package. How important is it that Congress moves fast on this?
I'll tell you how important it is. The $33 billion probably could have been $5 billion if the money would have been spent on the front end in terms of resiliency instead of on the back end in terms of disaster relief. So all the studies that I've looked at, and I was on a global council on adaptation. I was the only mayor in the United States on that council. And one of two mayors in the world. The mayor of Paris was the other mayor. And all the studies that we made a presentation to the United Nations, and all the studies show that for every dollar that you spend prophylactically before the storm in resiliency, you save $7 to $8 in disaster recovery. So in the city of Miami, we passed something called Miami Forever, which is something that, we have a lot of Hispanics in Miami. We don't like to pay taxes, just like most people don't.
I don't know if anybody likes to pay taxes.
Yeah.
But they voted to tax themselves on this issue, right? So it was right after Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma hit in September of 2017, and people had in the forefront of their mind what 4 to 6 foot storm surge could do. Brickell, which is our main financial district, was about 4 feet underwater. That was 4 to 6 foot storm surge. What we saw in the last 2 years with Dorian and with Ian is 15 to 25 foot storm surge. There is I would posit that there is no city in the planet that is prepared for that. And Mother Nature has just shown us her destructive capabilities, and if we don't start investing money today, the kind of investment we're gonna have to make tomorrow after the fact is gonna be a multiple, that we know.
But I mean, I'm just gonna go off script for a minute here, because I think that's an interesting point, but we've seen this is a partisan issue. And maybe it shouldn't be, maybe it's a false choice, but Republicans have opposed this kind of investment. Who makes this investment? The city of Miami make this investment? State of Florida, federal government, who makes this?
So I'll take the question in two parts,
Yeah.
right? You first said that a Republican was the one advancing the $30 billion in relief aid. So I would argue that in Florida, it's probably not as much of a partisan issue, right? We have, a Republican governor, Republican legislature, 2 Republican senators, and at least 1 Republican mayor.
Just one, though.
And we all agree on I think, a premise that the environment is the economy. not the environment versus the economy, right? There's been this misperception you have to choose one or the other. I think in Florida, with the Everglades providing our drinking water, with the Bay providing a tremendous amount, billions of dollars in ecotourism that we hope to be able to keep for generations in the future. In Florida, maybe it's a little different. I think certainly nationally you have to make the case, but as it becomes more of an economic issue, I think it is depoliticized as well because, again, it's a question of return on investment. Do you want to spend $30 billion after some devastation, or do you want to spend $5 billion on the front end? The second part of your question is, what government should do it? And my answer is all governments should do it. So Miami did $200 million, which is not enough, but it's a great start. We're hoping to get state and through the infrastructure bill, federal funding that matches or exceeds the money that we put in. So we've gotten $50 million from the state, and we're hoping to get money from the infrastructure bill.
How do you respond, though? Because as you say, it should be depoliticized, right? This is a human.
There's a lot of things that should be depoliticized.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
but think about
it would put us out of business, though.
Where
So
you have a lot of politicians in Florida. Senator Rubio, Senator Rick Scott, Governor DeSantis, in previous iterations have said when it's New Jersey, it's other places, they weren't going to support that kind of funding. Is it hard for Florida then to come make the case at the federal level?
Look, I don't want to. I'm not sort of their defenders, if you will. And I'm sure they would argue that whatever they voted against, they voted on it for probably other reasons, sort of more of a part of an omnibus spending package that they disagreed with. But I think there's a pretty good record in Florida, particularly in a Republican legislature, Republican governor, and Republican senators, of spending money on resiliency. I would even argue that it's more money than any other previous administrations have spent. Now, a lot of them have been Republican, so you could argue that maybe enough hasn't been spent, right?
Sure.
But my argument is the following: you're either going to spend it on the front end, or you're going to spend a lot more on the back end. And I think we got to start understanding that there's an order of magnitude differential with these storms that now require more investment.
So let's talk about Miami. We were just chatting before you got here about the boom in this city. I did an interview with you about a year ago. I don't know if you remember that we.
I don't.
Okay, well,
I'm just kidding. I don't remember what I did yesterday.
Not that memorable,
I'm
Jake.
not that memorable.
No, I'm just kidding.
Trust me, I'm told that all the time.
I'm just kidding.
No, but we talked about the boom in this city. I mean, post-COVID, you see, big financial firms. You're big on crypto. You're big. All these firms are moving down here. Big population boom. You have the Waldorf Astoria Tower, a super high building, I guess 100 stories or taller.
Right.
Tallest residential building in the city of Miami, south of New York City, actually, when it's
That's
finished. Talk about what that means for Miami and just what you've seen now. We're in end of 2022. What you've seen in the last 2 years in the city.
Well, since we're kind of focusing the conversation on the pandemic and on recovery
Yep.
and on hurricane recovery, I would say we're number one in the nation right now in pandemic recovery. I think that's important. We're number one in the nation also in wage growth. We're number one in the nation in tech job growth and in tech job migration, which is not something that you would necessarily associate with the city of Miami. I think what we did was we found an inflection point, which was an opportunity as the economy was sort of changing from a highly industrial economy to a more highly digital economy. And I consider that to be a tsunami of opportunity, that we caught that wave and have ridden that wave all the way into the shore. And I think a lot of cities were going in the opposite direction. For example, New York famously pushed out Amazon after they won the HQ2 prize. And that's important because it's not just 50,000 jobs that you lose, it's a signaling effect. If you're successful,
right,
we don't necessarily want you here. In San Francisco, you had an elected official said, F Elon Musk, and he wrote back, message received, and left. Mm-hmm. And it's not just that it's the world's richest person, but the signaling effect to creators and innovators is, look, if you're successful, we don't want you here. And so what I did was the exact opposite. I responded to a question of, what if we move Silicon Valley to Miami with a very simple answer, how can I help? So the narrative was set. We want you out, we want you in. And since then, we've had $2.5 trillion in assets under managed companies move to Miami. Our venture capital pipeline grew last year by 400%. This year, we're already outpacing last year's growth, going into an economy where interest rates are rising at historically high levels, and that should be slowing the economy. We're still outpacing last year. And on crypto, we had to find our slingshot in the David and Goliath story to disrupt the Goliaths. And we felt that going all in on crypto would give us that opportunity to sort of capitalize on the next generation technology and fintech. And we've grown, I think, 2,064% last year, number one in the nation in crypto investments and blockchain investments, about $800 million to companies that are funded in the blockchain space. Not to mention the 200 million from FTX, having the Bitcoin conference, which brings tens of millions of dollars in economic development, and all the companies that have moved, as you said, that have hired hundreds of high-paying people in our city.
Let's talk about kind of the small business, the topic of the day coming out of the pandemic. A lot of movement here coming to Miami, as you described, but there's still a lot of Americans worried, talking to small business owners here in Miami about inflation, gas prices, baby formula, shipping, right? What are you hearing are some of the challenges that small business owners are facing in Miami?
I would add to all those one additional thing. Low unemployment in the city of Miami. We have 1.4% unemployment. And so you think to yourself, well, how does that connect? And the problem is 1.4% unemployment is wonderful for a city until you want to open up a small business and you need to find employees, right?
Right.
So I think the conversation that we're having nationally on immigration is kind of an incoherent conversation because it's all about the border. When I think it should be more about what's in the U.S.'s economic best interests in a given moment. And I think that could be part of the solution. I mean, when you look at countries like China that have a declining birth rate like the United States, the difference between the U.S. and China is nobody wants to go to China. Everybody wants to come here. So that should be a strategic advantage for us here in the country, particularly in cities like ours.
How does that, it's interesting you brought up immigration because when speaking with some of the small business owners that are here today, they said that was one of the biggest issues. Being able to find people that have the right papers,
Absolutely.
that they're not going to get in trouble because, they're hiring somebody that isn't legal to be here.
That's right.
Is there any relief that Miami can provide, or is that just you have to look to Congress, which has clearly had inaction on this issue for over a decade?
Maybe Miami will be able to provide relief in a couple of years.
What is that? Oh, we'll get to 2024 quickly. I appreciate that.
That was okay. We're going there. We're going there.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, someone just tweet that he just announced his presidential.
Oh, that's not true. Please don't do that.
We'll just tweet it anyway.
Not true. That would be. No, I'm not gonna hurt you guys. That's good. It's good.
I know where you're going.
You know where I was going with this.
But listen, now we're just gonna say you announced your run here.
Okay.
So, if you could, on the small business front, if you could snap your fingers, besides immigration, what would you have the federal government do to help small businesses here and kind of everywhere?
Well, our formula for success in Miami has been three particular things. We've lowered taxes, so we reduced taxes to the lowest level in recorded history, puts more money in people's pockets so that they can do with their money what they want to and hire people or spend more money on capital and grow their business. We've kept people safe. With lowered taxes, we actually grew our city by 12%, which is the second most in recorded history. And with that additional revenue, we were able to pay our police officers better and have the most officers we've ever had. And shocking correlation, we're about to end the year with the lowest homicide rate per capita, which is also a big counter-narrative of what's happening in urban cities in America. And the third thing is we've leaned into innovation, trying to create an innovation economy, which creates high-paying jobs for our citizens. In the case of small businesses, they're the lifeblood of this country and certainly our city. So I would say the federal government should mind their pocketbook, right? Should balance its budget, and at the same time, it should, which of course would not create inflation, which is killing small businesses, right? The overspending in government. And then, of course, they should try to find a way to lower taxes so that people can have more money in their pocketbook to spend on their business as opposed to giving to government, which we know is not an efficient user of our dollars.
Another big issue has been supply chain issues, right? In a recent Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Voices survey, they found that 61% of small business owners said supply chain issues have gotten worse or stayed the same compared with 3 months ago. Like that's reality for the people that are in small business, whether it's getting uniforms, whether it's getting, kind of paper cups to be able to, I mean, all those things, right? So is there anything that at the local level you can do, or you just kind of, is that just the kind of global forces that you're having to say, hey, we're sorry you're dealing with this?
No, I think look, I'm president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, so I'm president of all the mayors in the country, and I think as someone that has that role, you have an opportunity to speak on national issues that impact, as you said, cities, towns, and small businesses. And I think this may be one of those inflection point opportunities where we need to de-emphasize our supply chain from China and start bringing it to this hemisphere, frankly, South America and Mexico. And I think when you look at socialism taking hold in South America, a big part of it is inequality, right? And so if you're able to bring the supply chain closer to the United States, you save money on transportation, A. B, you're putting it with people that hopefully and presumably will not be, sort of anti-American or antithetical to our values or an enemy in the future, which China increasingly seems to be. And when you look at things like our microchips, for example, which 80% of them are produced in Taiwan, that's a brewing battle right there, which is why I think the CHIPS bill was important, bipartisan, and also why I think we have to accelerate the Intel plant that's being built in Columbus, Ohio, to shorten the time where we are chip dependent on Taiwan as much as we can. So I think that there are things that the U.S. can do. I don't know how short run it is, but I do think that we should take this as an opportunity to really shore up our supply chain going into the next generation and doing it in a way that's strategically in our benefit vis-a-vis this hemisphere. I'll just say one last thing. When you look at immigration as an issue, right, part of it is it's a supply and demand issue, right? People that are in this hemisphere below the U.S. want to come to this country for opportunity. If you create opportunity in their own country, there's probably going to be less demand. So that also sort of helps navigate that issue as well.
Let me ask you, and before we get into politics, let me ask you.
We haven't been talking about politics.
Yeah, we are talking about politics. Trust me. What is next? What is next in the story of Miami? I mean, we've seen this obviously explosion of growth. Next for small business. Next for big business. Give me your wrap on that.
I think we're experiencing a tectonic shift that happens once in 4 generations. Right? You saw, unfortunately, the demise of Detroit during the Industrial Revolution. And I think if New York and California don't, and even Illinois, don't radically change some of their, particularly taxation policies, you could see something similar happening in this new change from the industrial to the digital economy. We are leaning into that heavily, right? And when you look at cities around the world, from Dubai to cities in Saudi and to Doha to Tel Aviv, of course, you're seeing cities in those countries in the Middle East really leaning into this economy as well. So I think that's one thing that's going to happen without a doubt. We love to do things to shore up the educational pipeline all the way K through 12 and university to get us to a place where we could say that we have that premium education, because I think education is the great democratizing force in our country. And I think that we're going to spike the ball. We're going to continue to lower taxes. I know that makes everyone in New York nervous. We're going to continue to lower taxes. We're going to continue to keep people safe. And we're going to continue to try to create high-paying jobs, because we think that that is a formula for prosperity for a generation. And I do believe that the decisions that we make today are going to affect us for one, if not multiple generations. I'll give you one small example. In the AI space, which is one of the areas where China is really going all in. I was at a conference recently where an AI expert, young man was saying, who's a young man billionaire, was saying that, look, the decisions that we make in the next 10 years in AI are going to define the next 100 years. Right. So I do think that we have to make some strategic decisions as a country to set up a similar, sort of a similar set of goals and a similar strategy for success. That's part of what I don't see in this country, and that's part of what worries me.
All right, let's talk quickly about politics before we run out of time.
I haven't been talking about politics this whole time.
We're in Florida, of all places.
We are.
You picked the wrong business if you don't want to talk about politics.
No, I'm saying I thought we were talking about politics from the beginning. I didn't realize that now we're talking about politics.
No, we're keying everybody up to that. So
cue the political talk.
Midterms, 2024.
Yes.
How confident are you that Republicans will win when it comes to the Senate and governor's races, and clearly the House race, Representative Salazar, in one of the kind of closest races in Florida right now?
I think that I think Republicans are going to take the House. I think from the polling that I've seen, it's starting to swing back in Republicans' favor. I think the Democrats had sort of a counter post-Dobbs bump, and I think the president got a couple things accomplished legislatively that gave him a bit of a bump. I think that's sort of, from what I've seen, it's starting to wane back. So I think the Republicans are going to pick up, somewhere between 20 and 30 seats, somewhere in that vicinity. The Senate, I think, is 50-50, but again, if you would have asked me a week or two ago, I would say it's closer to 50-50 now. I would say it's 55-45 in favor of Republicans taking the Senate. I think in terms of Florida, I think Representative Congresswoman Salazar, who's a very dynamic candidate, works really hard, former member of the media. I think she's got a good shot. I know her opponent. Her opponent has, see how I put this nicely. I think she's won one race, which was a Senate race. That's right, Oscar was leading the Senate at the time. She ran against one of my dear friends, won by a very small margin, and has lost 3 or 4 races in the past. So I don't know how competitive that will be. I don't know how competitive the money is, because I haven't been tracking that closely. The governor's races, typically, the last 4 governor's races, the last 4 governor's races have been decided by, I think, the last 3 have been decided by less than 1%. So if it's beyond 1%, I think, even though people will think it's a very close race, it will be not as so close as people think. And I'll say 2 dynamics. One is President Trump won Florida in 16 by 100,000 votes, and in 20 he won Florida by 400,000 votes. And the registration has favored Republicans in the intervening period. So everything, all that put together, militates in favor of Republicans winning the state by a good margin. And I say good margin, probably more than 1%, right? And but what people don't understand about Florida, which will be interesting, and I've said this, spoiler alert, there is a massive amount of independence in Florida. Massive, right? I think it's close to a third. It's not quite a third, but it's like 25% or something of voters in Florida are MPAs. So it kind of gets glossed over. Everybody thinks, oh, Republicans, Democrats. So where those MPAs break or how they break could determine the outcome. So if there's any surprises, I promise you it's going to come from that group.
It's almost as if Florida is a good proving ground for the White House. And so what is your, well, hold on, what is your
I was going to agree with you.
What is your lane in a Republican primary?
Look, I think, let me just go back to the...
No. Don't go back anywhere.
I'm going to say something. I'm going to say something about the initial statement because I think the initial statement was really important. Florida is the largest state with presidential electors up for grabs, right? Because you have California
New York.
And New York, right? So I guess, Texas is pretty, has been pretty stable, so has California, and so has New York. So Florida is the largest state that is theoretically up for grabs. Who am I, right? I'm someone who is from the next generation, right? I'm not a boomer, obviously. I'm someone who believes in a positive aspirational message. I'm someone who has a track record of success and a formula for success. I'm someone that understands this inflection between the industrial to the digital economy. And I'm someone who I think can speak to a variety of minority communities that are going to be important if Republicans want to grow their base for a generation. So if that's what the country's looking for in 2024, then it's something that I'll strongly consider. A presidential race, it's a huge decision, has enormous implications for your family, for your private life. It's something that, I would consider given the right circumstances and given the right mood of the country. We saw where the mood of the country was in 16. People were angry. In 20, it feels like they wanted anything but what they got in 16. And it remains to be seen what the country's going to want in 24. It's very early. The jockeying is certainly happening. There's
certainly happening here in this state. I mean,
it's happening everywhere.
Trump,
it's happening
DeSantis,
everywhere.
Rick Scott,
But I mean,
Rubio.
where do DeSantis and Trump fit into that kind of equation?
I think they both have the same lanes. If you want to talk lanes, I think they both have a similar lane, which I think could be problematic, right? Because if you're fighting over the same lane, you're sort of cutting the pie. And I also think there are multiple people who come from Trump's world who are thinking of running, and I wonder how they're going to fit into all that. And then, of course, the former president's going to be very influential, what he decides to do, whether he decides to run or be a kingmaker. I think he's going to be definitive, potentially, in the race.
Do you have any contact with him, Trump?
I saw him at a wedding recently. That's
Okay.
Somebody introduced me to him, and he said that I was the hottest politician in America after him. I don't know if he meant physical hot or if he meant.
I'm not sure you want to dig deeper on that.
Or if he meant I was I was getting a lot of buzz. I don't know exactly what he meant, but he was very nice. I have to say, I'll take it.
Yeah,
He was very nice. Introduced by a mutual friend. Very nice.
All right, last question. When are you going to make your decision? It sounds, frankly, in this whole conversation, like you're ready to run.
Again, I hate to give you the political answer, but I'm going to, right? Which is, it's a day, the cliche. I'm going to start, whipping out the cliches, right? You take it one day at a time.
Can we fast forward this part and get to the real stuff? You take
it one day at a time. You got to pray to the Lord, right?
Okay,
no,
good.
look, I think, it's a due diligence, deliberative process that will it will come to fruition when it does, and when it does, I'll make my decision. I know it's very vague and sort of not answering the question, but that's probably going to be my answer for a while.
All right, well, we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
See you
Why does nobody believe me?
see you in
Okay,
Iowa.
see you in a couple weeks.
The
Awesome.
Des Moines Marriott has a really nice
Thank you
couple
so
of
much.
rooms.
We
Thank
really
you for the
appreciate
recommendation
it.
on hotels.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, you're gonna.
personal. I don't remember the.
It's okay, I don't care. Yeah, I don't take it personally.
All right. Thank you all. If you guys want to keep your seats, please, we're going to start the fireside chat portion really quickly here. I'm going to now welcome Florida-based small business owners, Susie Battle, owner of, if you want to come up here, owner of Azucar Ice Cream, and Lalani Barea Undiano, Vice President of Ibali Uniform, and more, to the stage. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. That's quite the act to follow.
Well, you could supply ice cream to the White House when the mayor moves in.
Strong endorsement. We're going to start this conversation. I want to let each of you kind of talk a little bit about your story, your small business story, how you started your companies, got involved in your companies, and kind of what some of the opportunities and challenges have been. And maybe, Susie, we'll start with you.
So I'm Susie Battle. I'm the owner and founder of Azucar Ice Cream in the heart of Little Havana and Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
I didn't start off making ice cream. I was a banker for 20 years. Banking industry plummets in 2008. I had to decide what I was going to do. My children decided that I was going to open an ice cream store, and I said, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Not doing it. So it took me a little time, but little by little, I guess they finessed me. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So I went to Penn State, it has an ice cream school. I went to another school.
Whoa. Let's stop there for a second. There's such thing as an ice cream school?
Yes, there's ice cream school.
Anna, forget it. We're there.
A lot of chemistry, but it was great. I went to another school in St. Louis, and the only place in the world that could house a Cuban ice cream store, Little Havana. So it brought me back to my roots. It was a beautiful, I guess, way of showing who I am, showing everybody what I want to show them, and I want everybody to get that experience of Cuban ice cream and being Cuban. And that place definitely has that vibe. So you walk in, you could smoke a cigar, you could have a coffee, you could listen to live music, and this is every day, Monday through Sunday.
What time do you open?
Well, we're open at 11. But there's a lot of culture, there's a lot of authentic vibe in the street, and there's no place like it. So I'm very happy to be there. This is I'm going on my 12th year in business. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Lalani?
And I do have to say, she does have the best ice cream. I've invented a day that I call Tia Tuesdays, which is a day that I bring all my nieces and nephews, and we spend time with Tia. Tia's aunt in Spanish, and I spend many times going to her ice cream place and enjoying ice cream with my nieces and nephews.
Thank you.
My family business is Ibali School Uniforms. We've actually are homegrown, been in Miami for about 30 years. We really were the first ones to really push school uniforms for public schools. It always really existed for private and Catholic schools, but not necessarily in public industry. And being a city that is so diverse with so many people from everywhere, there's such an importance of being able to start school feeling that you're on the same playing field as everyone, and there's no differentiation, and that's really how we have started. And then I entered the business, I'd say really since I was born, but I say legally that doesn't count, right? So officially about 15 years ago. And then I always tell myself, what is my why? Why do I want to be a part of this uniform business? And my why was very simple. We have a direct impact of that first day of school memory. Everyone remembers their first day walking into school. So there is nothing better than knowing that I can prepare these students to feel ready for school, have a lot of pride in wearing their school logo, representing the school that they are from, and excited to start and making sure that their uniform is not a worry for them.
Let's talk about the pandemic and how it impacted both your businesses. I mean, obviously it impacted everybody in some way, but I mean, what were some of the challenges you guys faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, my street closed down, so we are tourist-driven definitely during the day, local-driven at night. It was crazy. It was like a 9/11 for us, like looking at the street, because it's always so filled and packed with people and music and things going on. So that being said, I started delivering ice cream in my car to people in different neighborhoods. And I'll tell you what, Instagram saved me. I would say, hey, this week I'm going to Kendall. This week I'm going to Hialeah. This week I'm going here. And it was amazing that everybody from Miami decided to order ice cream, and it kept us afloat. And thank God. Dallas did well because it's in a neighborhood, and all those people actually, since it's a community, decided to also buy ice cream. So thank goodness that everybody did their share, and we're still in business. Super happy.
How about you? I mean, school's shut down, right? I mean, there was nobody going to school.
I mean, it just doesn't go much more than that. I mean, they're not in school, they're not wearing uniforms.
Right.
And that, it does take an effect, especially coming from a family business where our pride and joy is that every year we also give $250,000 towards uniforms for kids to start school. But if no one's buying, it makes it also difficult, and your margins are a lot smaller, to be able to give back, especially right now that I just recently learned from Amy from Project Upstart that here in Miami, as of a week ago, do you know how many unidentified homeless students we have? 5,900 students. And this is an impacting number because us, part of that same thing of why do I do school uniforms is because I also know that whenever I have a principal that calls us and says, hey, we have a student in need, we know we're gonna be there. We're gonna provide uniforms for them, and they're gonna start that day of school feeling that they are one and the same with everyone there. So that definitely took a big impact for us. Luckily though, I do have to say we are very blessed to be in Miami and Florida, that they were one of the first states to be able to reopen. They're one of the first to start reopening schools, reopening businesses, because ultimately it's any other entrepreneur and business owner. We want to work. We want to get going. We want to get moving. So we were blessed on that, and that school did eventually start. We did receive a lot of help from the PPP loan, so that was a blessing. So we are proud to be back and running.
That's great. I want to talk, the mayor, we asked him a couple of questions, was teed off of our conversation a few days ago, which was really thinking about workforce challenges as well as supply chain challenges. He talked a little bit about immigration. That's kind of something that would need to happen at the federal level. Supply chain is a global issue, but you all are facing that on a day-to-day basis. Maybe, Susan, you can start, but I mean, these are issues that you're passionate about.
Well, certainly we can't find Oreos in this town. So that being said, that's, a big deal. So even our cup situation, like because of the shipping, the shipping tripled. So that being said, like a cup that used to be 8 cents is now 25 cents. That's a cup without the ice cream in it. So when you start thinking along those numbers, what's gonna make somebody not just go to Publix or somewhere and buy the ice cream? It gets to a point where I either lose money, which is happening, or I continue going on and just hoping and crossing my fingers. I'm not the cross the fingers type girl. So, I mean, that's a big issue. Immigration for us is a huge issue, especially in Miami. I must get maybe 10, 15 people a day trying to work for us, which I would be thrilled to have them. But they don't have papers. Like, how do you bring people into this country and not give them a way to work? So for us, in Miami especially, that's a big deal. Just give them a work permit. I mean, something temporary. I don't care.
And queuing off on what she says and getting these people to be able to work, many times these are the ones that want to work small businesses. Something that really we suffer with. We employ half of America, but yet to be able to hire and be able to give a decent wage and benefits, realistically, bigger corporations are able to do that. Small businesses, we have higher turnovers. Being able to provide those benefits is difficult. So unless we can also kind of be able to work on getting these immigrants who are here, they're passionate to be able to be part of living that American dream and getting them to work. And these are really the first ones that want to be there and want to push their family forward. Now, as far as how have we been affected, I like to do visual numbers. We used to pay for containers about $3,000 to $4,000 to bring our product here. Can you guess what that amount has increased to?
10.
No. A little bit more. $17,000 to $18,000
Wow.
to bring a container here. That is an exorbitant amount of money that hits a direct cash flow. Now, one thing is paying $18,000 for a container. Another thing is it doesn't even arrive on time.
Right.
Right.
Now, I'm a seasonal business. School uniforms. School is gonna start no matter what.
Right.
Right?
Container or not.
Container or not. Now, I have to say, we've had a lot of understanding people when it comes to supply chain. You can be understanding when it's something affecting you, but when it's affecting your child, the mama bears and the papa bears are coming out. They're telling you, no. We need this now. Because, again, it goes back to the reason why I do this. I want these kids to feel ready and excited to start that first day of school. So how do I tell them, hey, the thing is, it's there and it's at a port, But right now, that port is delayed and backed up for a month, and I can't swim to it. You know,
Right.
these are real issues.
Right.
Now, we've done the responsible thing, which is we've purchased earlier this year. And everyone here can say, well, duh, that's a great thing, right? I'm telling my principals and my administrators, and they're very happy I'm telling this. And I'm excited too. Do you know what's not happy? My cash flow.
Yeah, right.
Because now I'm bringing the product in earlier, and God willing, it'll arrive in March. But that's 3 months of product sitting on my shelf. Let's do some math now. Let's add a little bit here. We're looking at interest rate of a what now? 6.5% on $1 million of inventory sitting down. That's about 65,000. The amount of inventory we have in March is 3 million. So now we're looking at about 195,000. Let's multiply that for 3 months of shelf space. Yeah, that part I'm not happy about, but we've been in business for 30 years. And even though that's affecting our cash flow, you know what's something that we cannot afford to affect this year? Our reputation. My reputation has taken our family business that really started the school uniforms here for 30 years to be able to build a respectable company, and then because of things out of our control, our reputation is being hurt. And that's not a good thing. And yes, we are having a lot of great companies moving in, but we can't forget our small businesses and being able to support them.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing we hear a lot from small business owners is the need to reduce the bureaucracy at the federal level. SBA, modernizing the SBA. Do you guys have any experience with that? And
Well, definitely. I mean, we went to Washington as a group with 10,000 small businesses to try to advocate for that.
Yep.
So, I mean, it definitely is out of tune with what we need.
Yep.
Like, even like insurance, like think about like health insurance. I can't afford health insurance right now. Like, or it's either health insurance or I continue to grow my company. I'm going to take my chances. So, I mean, that's sort of sad to say, right? I can't even offer it to my employees. So, I mean, if I'm paying $750 a month, they can't, there's no way. So, that being said, it's sort of sad that in this government and in this, administration and in this way of living, that even people that were born here can't afford it.
Have you been talking? I mean, the SBA has been reauthorized in almost 20 years. Is that something that kind of impacts you and your company?
No, it's definitely long overdue, and it's something we need to start talking about again.
I want to. We asked the mayor, if you could had a wand and you could tell Washington to do something. I want to end on this note because we talked to a lot of small business owners all across the country this past year, and oftentimes when we're in Washington, it's kind of 30,000, 100,000 foot kind of views. But what is there, if there was one thing that you wish Washington would take seriously or take action on, what would it be?
I would say immigration, 100%. We've got to let these people, once they get here, work. I mean, what are they, you can't expect them to just sit around for however many days or whatever and just sit around and not work. It just doesn't make sense. It's irresponsible.
Because I don't believe this wand exists, I rather...
we have the wand.
I want to be realistic here and say, instead of bringing it to the politician, I'd rather bring it back to the individuals. You know what? Ultimately, I truly believe that when we are here for these events, that we have you all here listening to us, our viewers as well, is as individuals, we can do bigger changes. We're about to go into our biggest holiday season, which is a time that everyone is really purchasing. People are out, they're celebrating. So what I'd like to say is really do your research, support small, support local, because many times it is that local restaurant, that local ice cream shop, that local retailers that really make Miami. We are El Sazon here in Miami. It's not necessarily the big corporations. So support your community. When you look to go buy and where to spend your time, support them, because ultimately those are the ones that when they're doing something, they're doing it here for our community, and when they're giving back here in our backyard.
All right, well, we'll end it on that note. Susie Leilani, thank you so much for being here this morning and sharing your stories. Big thank you to Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business for helping us this year fund this program and going across the country, as well as the mayor of Miami for joining us. Have a great day and stay safe.